Hi everyone, trust you all are doing well. So in this series, we're going to learn how to build a Laravel Livewire CRUD application. My current version for Laravel is 8.6. My Livewire version is 2.5. Now, the reason why I'm showing you that is because if you're watching this in the future, yours might be a little bit different. As Livewire is currently under active development, so things might work a little bit different for you. So please just consult the documentation if it doesn't work out. Right, the next thing is we're going to build a full page component, so meaning we're not going to make use of controllers, so everything is going to run through our Livewire component. Now, the next thing is this is not going to be a single page application. If you used to React or Vue, then you will understand what that means. The next thing is table links are no longer supported or under active development. So Livewire team, please can you think of and come to a solution for us if we want to build a single page application. Now, the next thing is someone might ask me, why don't put everything under one video? If I do that, the video will be a bit too long, and people don't like to watch long videos from experience, right? So I want to kind of keep it short and precise so that we can go through all episodes one by one. And maybe later I will add everything to one video for those that prefer the longer format, right? So let's quickly get into this and let's create our Livewire component. Right, so in order to create a Livewire component, just open up your terminal and PHP artisan make Livewire. And I'm just going to use tag because what we're going to do is we're going to create a CRUD application in order to create a tag. All right, so let's just do that. I'm just going to call it tag like that. As you can see, it will create a class for us and it will create a view. So let's quickly go there. Right, so if you go to your app, HTTP Livewire, you'll see you've got a folder right there and you'll see the class in here. So this is our class right here. The next thing is if we go to resources, views, Livewire, and you'll see our view right there. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to show, since we're going to create a full page Livewire component, okay, so let me just quickly show you these two things. On the resources, views, layouts right here, I'm going to create just a new one, anonymous one. So let's just create a new file and I'm going to call this one just main.blade.php. Okay, so I'm just going to create a boilerplate quickly. And if you're using older versions, let's say in Laravel 7, we didn't use slots, we use add yield. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to do a body like this. Okay, or content. Let's do it like this, content. So if you guys using older versions, I want to show it for both how to do it. Right, so let's start off with the first one. Okay, so if you're using the older versions, you will probably have the yield content and not the slot like this. Okay, with the newer versions. All right, so if you're using the older versions, let me just quickly show you then how to, in order to actually render your full page component in there, what we do is we do an extends, okay, and then extends which layout. Now you must choose the layout that you're going to use. Now in this case, it will be layouts file .main. Okay, so I'm referencing, so basically what it will do is it will go to resources, views, layouts, and it will go for this main file right there. Now the next thing that we need to add in here is the section. Okay? The section, where do we want it to be? So in this case, we're going to yield content, so it's going to look for this one right here. So we're going to add the content in there. Okay, so that's the old way that we're going to do things without slots. Just make sure that you do it like this. The next way, okay, so the next one will be, let's say you're using slots. In this case, it will be under our guest file. Let me just go there, resources, views, layout. You will see we've got the app and the guest. So I'm just going to delete this one. Okay, I'm not going to use that since I'm using a JStream installation. So this is all good for me. All right, so I'm going to use either the app or the guest. Okay, because if you're using the dashboard for your Livewire CRUD on the app, it's kind of will be needed, right? So let's quickly do that. So under our tag right here, what we do now is we're just going to call it layout like this. Okay, layout, and then we can just, by default, it will go to the app layouts.app. Okay, but I'm just going to show you guys this. So layouts.app like this. That is going to go anyway by default to that one. Now, let's say you don't want to make use of that. We can just type in the guest layout. All right, so as you can see under my layouts right here, you'll see we've got a guest layout right there. Okay, now the next thing that we need to add in here is the slot. Okay, so what you can do now is you can just add the slot like this. So if you wanted to go to a specific slot in your layout view, so let's say we got a guest layout, by default, if we don't add the slot like this, okay, so by default, it will go to, you make use of this slot. okay, which is all good, which we are going to do. Now, let's say you have another slot in here, okay, and we're going to call this one body. Okay, and let's put that between a section tags, just like this. Okay, so let's say there's another slot in there called body. So in order to make use of this slot instead of the main slot, what we do is we add the dot slot like this, and then we add the body like that. Okay, so now our Livewire component will know that it needs to go to this slot right there instead of the main one. But if you want to make use of the main one, you can just basically remove this like this. Okay. In this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to create our tag model with its migration and seeder. All right, so open up your terminal. In order to create a model, we do PHP artisan make model. And we're going to call this one tag model. The convention is singular, so tag. We add the -m flag for the migration, S for the seeder. If you want to create a factory, you can add the F as well. But we're not going to create a controller because everything is going to go through our Livewire component. So press enter. So as you can see, it creates that for us. All right, so let's see. We got on the app models. You will see we got our tag model. Let's go open our migrations file under database migrations. You will see we got our tags migration. The other one that we have is our seeder. So database seeder, you will see we got our tag seeder right there. Right, let's start off with the first one, our model itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a protected table, and we're going to set that to self table. Okay, and let's quickly create that constant. So constant table, and we're going to set that to be the tags table. All right, so this is just my convention that I use to set up my models. Okay, so you can obviously, instead of that, you can just copy the tags and just bring it in here like this, okay, instead of that. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, I like to use protected fillables, protected fillable for mass assignment. I like to do this. Okay, you can set it as two ways. You can do protected fillable. The other one, let me just show you, is protected guarded, and you can set it to an empty array like this. So what that will do is you will have to check everything that you validate and all that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm just going to leave to do the protected fillable, because we're going to do validation inside the Livewire component, but we're going to get there. So the first one, this will be just a name, and the other one will be slug. All right, just like that. All right, so now our model is all set up. So let's quickly do that in our migrations file. So in our table right here, so in our tags migration, okay, we need to create the first one, the table, and this one will be a string, and that will be for the name. Okay, and the other one, this one will be a table as well, and this will be also a string, and this will be a slug, and we want to give it a unique attribute like this. Right, so you can either add the unique key there, or we can add it to the name, because remember, we're going to create a slug from the name. So you can either do either or. Right, so now that's all set up. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up our tag table seeder, this one right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the DB, okay, table, and what I want to do in there, I'm just going to call on insert. All right, just make sure you bring in the DB facade right there. Now, the thing is, we need to know which table. So in this case, we're going to do it in a tags table. All right, and I'm just going to create an array. So the first one, all right, so the first array that we're going to put in, this is going to be the name, and we're going to create I'm just going to call this one PHP, just for simplicity's sake. The next one, this one is going to be the slug. All right, so I just created 3 tags, the PHP, Laravel, and Livewire, and I created and updated it. I just used the Carbon helpers now and that one right there. Okay, so now we can quickly seed the database and migrate. Let's quickly do that. Open up your terminal, and we're just going to do PHP artisan migrate fresh, and you can just actually say migrate and add just a -- sheet. It's completely fine, and I'm going to do this. Okay, so let's quickly create that. As you can see, it created the tables, but we haven't seeded the database because we didn't call on the seeder. So let's go to database, seeders, this one right here. Okay, instead of the user table seeder, we're just going to call it the tag seeder. Let's make sure I bring it in like that. Let's try again. And as you can see, it seeded the database. So in this video, we're going to create the Livewire application. Now, I just want to leave a side note right there. I'm going to do the videos as if you guys are new to the framework. So if you guys understand it, you can kindly just skip ahead in these videos or don't even watch this right here until we get to the more complicated parts. But there is some folks that are new to the framework, so please bear with us. Right, there's a couple of things that we're going to be add to the series as requested by our viewers. The first one is the real-time validation. We're going to do that, pagination and searching and multi-column filtering. So if you guys want to add anything else, please let me know in the comment section and we will do it. So this series might just, instead of being just a short one, we might prolong it for those that want to learn extra things as well. All right, so let's get started with our routes. All right, so this is a standard route that we use in Laravel. So this is a standard get route. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the route, we're going to go to tags, and then we're going to go to the controller class, and then we're going to go to the index method in that controller, and then we have the name for that route as index. Now, in order to create one for Livewire, we just do a route. We still have the same get, right? And we still have the same name, how we would add the URL. Okay, so like this. Now, the other thing that we do is now we just mention the class of that name. So in this case, we had a tag class like this. And then we can still add the name right here for the route. Okay, as let's say we just call it tags like that. Now, this is very important. If you're using your class like this, you have to make sure you bring it in, import it at the top. Right here, this one, but don't import the modal. Okay, this is referencing the Livewire class right there. Okay, so if you do that, you can either import the class at the top or you can reference the full path to the class like this. Okay, so you can do either or. This kind of make my routes look very cluttered, so I don't like to do this. So I rather import it at the top because it makes it quite easier for me right there. Okay. So as you can see, my class is right there. Okay. So another thing that you can do, you can use a route group. Now, let's say for our tags, we had middleware. Now, let's quickly create a route group with a prefix and a route name. So let's quickly do that. Okay. I'm just going to call this one tags. So as you can see, right now, we've got a prefix of tags. So we can actually remove this right here and just put a / like that. Now, we have a prefix of tags and we got a route name as tags dot. So instead of tags right here, we can just call it index, or we can even remove it right there. Okay. Right. So now the next thing, let's say we want to add authenticated middleware. Okay, so I'm just going to add the tags in there. I'm going to remove the route name. I'm going to leave the prefix. And what I can do now is I can just add the middleware like this. So I'm going to add middleware. Now, let's say you want to have the default middleware, the authenticated one, and the email must be verified. We can just add it like this and verify it. So now what will happen is, before we access that Livewire route, we have to go through the middleware to make sure the person is authenticated and verified. So even if you have created a custom middleware, you can still reference it right here. Okay. And as you can see, the prefix of tags, so you can obviously leave it like that. Okay, so if you, let's say you don't even need the prefix right here, so what you can do, you can still add your tags in there, and you can just create a route group with the middleware of auth, and you can add all your different Livewire classes right here. So in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to lay some groundwork with the partials for our head, nav, and the footer. So let's get started. Right, so let's go to resources, views, and you'll go to layouts. I'm going to make use of the guest layout. You can obviously apply whatever you learn here and apply it actually to your app layout. All right, so the first thing we're going to do now is under components, under partials, we're going to create 3 of them. We create a footer.blade.php. Let me just open that, head.blade, and the nav right here. Okay, so the first thing for the head section, what we're going to do is we're going to cut out everything between the head tags and go to the head section right there and paste it in here. Okay, so then we reference that. So X partials. Right, and the next one we're going to reference is the navigation. So let's do that. So X partials nav, and then the footer. All right, so let's start off with our head section. So since we already copied it right here, so what I'm going to do for the title, I'm just going to cut out the title right there. Just move this up and put it right underneath the style. right here. All right. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a conditional right here. So if the title is set, then it must be that title, otherwise we use something else. Right, so I'm just going to delete that and just give it some room there. I'm going to add the blade syntax, and what we're going to check for is set. Right, and what we want to check for, we want to check for a title variable, and we're going to use slots to pass in the title, and we're going to do a ternary operator, and we're going to check config. All right, so if the title is available, go to the app name, so app.name. All right, then we're going to concatenate a pipe, right, with some spacing in. Then we're going to concatenate the title that we're going to pass through, else we do nothing. Okay, just like that. Okay, so if we need to receive this from our head section, so let's go there. So now we're in our blade. So if you've been following the blade series, you will kind of understand this, right? If you don't, please watch the blade series for us, right? So then you can do a title, question mark, if nothing's available. You can obviously add anything in here you want. So if the title is not available, it's not passed through as a slot, you could say some page, or whatever the case might be. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to leave it empty. Okay, so that's basically what you're going to do. All right, the next thing I'm going to do, where's my style sheet? I'm going to add an add push above our style sheet right here. So add stack. Okay, and I'm going to call this one style sheet. All right, so if we need to push any extra basically styles, we can include it right here. So let's go to the next part. Let's go to the nav. Right, so in our navigation right there, let's go. We're going to put the nav, and we're going to, right, so we're going to create a nav, and inside that a UL, inside that LI, and inside that we're just going to add an anchor tag. All right, so that's what we have right here. All right, let's start off with the anchor tag right here. I just want to give it some room. So the first one, this one will be a route. Okay, and that will be our home route that we created. I created a home route. Let me just quickly show you. Let's go to our web routes right here. I just created another Livewire component for our home route. Okay, and then we obviously have our tag right there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Let me just bring this down, and this one will be for our tags. Right, I just want to add some styling here, so I'm just going to give it a class, and okay, so I'm going to give it a background. Let's say Indigo 500, and we're going to do flags, and then we're just going to give it a padding of 2, and let's say space X of 6. Okay, and then we're just going to add a container class, and we're just going to do MX auto. This will look a little bit better if we can add the class actually in here. So BG Indigo, let's say 500. Okay, like that, and let's do a padding 4. Right, so this is going to be our home route, and this one is going to be our tag route. So just for tags. And we're just going to make the tags white. Right, so now we got our, basically our backbone, so all groundwork done. So I just need to, we can actually add in here footer, and we can just say copyright. Make it an H1, just say copy. Right, so if you want to add something more, you can do that, but I just kind of want to make it just simple. Right, so let's quickly see how this all look like. Right, so as you can see, we got our home tag and we got our tags right there. So we got all of that done. So all good stuff. So let's quickly go to those views. Right, so now our guest layout is all set up. So the next thing we need to go is go to those views. So I got my tags views right here. So what I want to do now is I want to do for the X slot. Let me just actually do this X slot. All right, and this one is going to be for the name of the title. Okay, and this one is going to be the title is going to be tags. This. Okay, so I'm just going to do this one for the same thing for page title. I'm going to do the same thing for my home page. Okay, it's be like water. Right, so if you've been following the Blade series, which I will pop up a link right here. So if you guys want to go and watch more about slots, I'll leave a link here. So the slot that we're passing from our Livewire component right here will be used inside our guest layout right here for the title. Okay, so awesome stuff. Right, so we've got a title for the tags and we've got a title for the homepage. Right, so if we go to the homepage, you can see it displays the home title right there. So if you go to the tags, you will see it displayed right there. Just remember, we're not building a single page application and using any turbo links, all right, so that we don't have to do subsequent requests to actually refresh the page. All right, so in single page applications, you can go to the different tabs without having to refresh the page, but we're not going to use that. I know you can use inertia and Vue.js to do that, but we're using a Livewire course, so I'm not going to do that in this case. So we're going to start off with the C for Create in our Livewire CRUD series. Now we're going to create, in this episode, we're going to create a new Livewire component called store inside a tags folder, and we're going to do some real-time validation. Now, everything that I'm going to do in the store right here, you can do in the tag component that we created a couple of episodes back. So you don't have to create the Livewire component store, but I'm doing this out of personal preference because I like to kind of keep my things separate, right? Totally up to you. Now, the next thing that I want to show you under resources, views, components, I've got two components that I created, the alert component and a button component. The button is to actually submit the form, and the message one is to kind of, when the session has a message of success, we display the message right here. Now, these two components right here are easily downloadable. I will leave a link in the description and I'll show you. Right, so this is the components. You will see it's the components.zip, and you have the alerts and the buttons right there. Just make sure you copy them and paste them inside your components folder. And you paste them in here, right here. It's under components, alerts, and buttons. Right, so let's quickly create our Livewire component, so you don't have to. We'll quickly create this one, and then we can get started. So open up terminal, so PHP artisan make Livewire. I'm going to call this one in a tags folder, and I'm just going to call it store. Right, so as you can see, it created the class and the view files. Okay, all good stuff. So on the app HTTP Livewire, we'll see we got a new tags folder, and I got the store right there. Right, so let's start off with the first one. We're going to create a public property, and this one is going to be for the name. And obviously, I'm not going to create an email inside that, but I just want to do this for the real-time validation for anybody that might want to learn that. Right, so when I do save the form, I'm not going to make use of it. I'm just going to basically just use that for real-time validation. Right, so that's the two public properties. The next thing we need to do is we need to add some rules. Right, so this is what we're going to use for the validation. So let's start off. We're just going to create an array, and inside that, we're just going to have the name. Okay, the name field, we're going to make that required. And we want to make that name unique. It must be unique inside the tags table and the name table, like this name column. Right, and we want to do is we want to set a minimum amount of characters. Let's make it easy, make it 2, and you can set it to whatever you want. And we want to do a max of, let's say, 10. All right, let's go to the email. I'm just going to use the email. I'm just repeating myself again. Just going to use the email just for validation because someone else might want to use this somewhere else, and I can just learn it right here. And we just want to check the email right here. Okay, so just like that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tap into Livewire's class hook called updated. Okay, so let's just quickly create that method. Right, so this one is called updated. Now, the thing is, whenever we type something in an input field, so in this case, let's say the name right there, this method, this hook basically fires off. Now, we're going to use this hook to do the real-time validation on the rules that we just created right there. Okay, so let's do that. So in order to do real-time validation, you can do validate only. All right, so this is for the real-time validation. If you don't want to do that, you can just do validate. Okay, so that happens. So when we submit the form, then it's going to check the rules only then. Okay, so what we want to do, we do want some real-time validation. Now the thing is, it's requiring an argument, as you can see right there, 0 arguments. Now the thing is, you can add anything in you want. I can even call this one Joe Soap and put it in here, Joe Soap. That's not going to have any effect on my validation rules. All right, so you can just call this one like it is in the documentation, property name. Like this. Okay, so you can do it just like that, no problemo. Let's move on to the next thing. This will be responsible, so whenever, this is basically the class hook right here, updated like I explained before. So whenever anything happens in here, this hook fires off. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to validate that. Right, the next thing is this is going to be responsible for actually creating the tag, so public function, and this one is the store right here, and we're just going to bring in the tag. Just make sure we bring in the tag model, and what we want to do is we want to run the create method on it, right, the static method. Right, so what we want to do is we want to set the name to this name, property that we created, And the next thing is for the slug, we want to set that to a string. Just make sure we bring in it as well to this name. Right, so I'm just going to make sure I bring this in. So eliminate support string and the tag. Otherwise, we're going to get an error that those classes are not found. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to flash the session with the success message. And we're going to just say tag. You can be fancy or be more creative for this. I'm just going to say tag created. And then we're just going to reset this input fields for the name and the email. Okay, so that you can just say this, reset. Okay, so what that does is basically the input fields, it just sets them to nothing. Okay. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to obviously go to our view and we have to do some work in here. So let's start off with the first one. Delete that and make this a section. I'm just a section and I'm just going to give it a class. Right, so just give it a class of half, padding for MX auto space Y4 and a shadow. And inside that, I'm just going to create an H2 with tag small and a tags indigo or 500. Just like this. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say create tags. Right, so under this, we're just going to create a form. Right, so we're not going to have any action methods like that. So let's just remove that. So any action attributes are removed. The next thing we're going to do is we need to add a wire submit right here. So we're going to use Livewire to do the submit the form, but we just want to prevent the default behavior of the form. So prevent, and we're going to set this to our store method right here. So let's just add the store. Okay. So when we submit the form, it's going to call on the store method, and the store is this method that we created right there. Okay. And I just want to give this a class of space Y. Okay, let's start off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a div with the same thing, space Y. And inside this, I just want to make it easy for us. Okay, so if you're using a Jetstream installation, you go to Resources, Views. You're going to the vendor folder. Actually, on the auth, you'll see the login right there. You can copy basically the Jetstream label for the email and the input fields right there. So just copy them and paste them inside your store. All right, and then we just change them to the name. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to bind our Y model. So Y model, and we want to bind that basically to the name property right here. So let me just actually give us a name like that. But before I do that, I just want to add a debounce. Otherwise, we're going to do a lot of requests to the server, and I just want to keep that to a minimum. So I just want to add a debounce of 500 milliseconds. Okay, so the next thing, just copy this one down, and we're going to do the same thing for the email. All right, so we got our Y model.debounce for the email as well. So just make sure you have that in. Now, the next thing I just wanted to show you, if you just put the XJet input error, this is just part of the Jetstream installation. Okay, so if there's any errors right there, it will display it like this. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to add our submit button. Okay, so if you downloaded the link, you can obviously use it. So we can do like buttons, just like this, and then we're just going to add the dot primary. Like this. Okay, so that's the button that we just downloaded. Now there's a couple of attributes I want to add in here. So I'm just going to do a wire target, and I'm going to set that to the store method. All right, so if the wire, if it's loading, right, so what I want to do is I want to disable the button as well. So attribute, and we just want to say disabled. All right, the next thing is we want to say the button is type of submit. And there's another important property right here, and this is called disabled. Right? And we're going to set it to a method that we're going to create in a second, a variable called disabled. Now, the thing is, if we go to that button right now, what I'm having in here is we're going to happen if the disabled is basically true, disable this button right there. The reason for that is if the person has any errors, all right, so let's say if we type in here and the real-time validation is letting us know, listen, there's an error, then we want to disable the button. Or if the fields are empty, we want to disable the button as well. So I need to create a method for that. So let's quickly, at the top right here, we're going to add PHP tags. And I'm just going to create that disabled variable. And I'm going to set that to if there's any errors. So errors, we just want to do a ternary operator. So we're going to do any. So if there's any errors, okay, we're going to question, and then we're going to set it to true, else we set it to false. Okay, so this is the button, and we're going to disable if there's any errors. Or we want to check if it's empty, basically this name, and or if it's empty, this email, just like that. Okay, so basically we're going to disable the button if there's any errors, or if the input field of this name is empty, and if the email is empty. Okay, awesome stuff. Okay, so the next thing we need to do in here is we need to add the create right here. Okay, so now we can work with this form. Now the thing is, we need to link this component, all right, this one right we have created right here, to our main component that we created. This one right here. So if I go in here, what I'm going to do, I'm just, as you can see, the tags right there. So I'm just going to reference that create right there as Livewire tags.store. Right, so now our Livewire is all hooked up to our main component. All right, so I'm just going to close this off. So as you can see, we got create tags, and we got the name right there, and we got the email address. And as you can see, the button is disabled. We cannot do anything. The next thing I want to add in here is the alerts. So just above the title, I just want to do X alerts message, just like that. Okay, so now we got our alert in here as well. Right, so let's quickly see if our validation work. So as we can see already, the button works quite well. So we disabled the button, but now we just want to check if the real-time validation work as well. Right, let's start off with the first one, PHP. As you can see, the name has already been taken. So if I just add one more, you can see the name must at least be 5 characters. So let's add one more again. You can see it disappears, but the button is still disabled. All good. So if I do email, as you can see, the email must be a valid email address. And if we add email.com, as you can see, the button is displayed right there. So if we create this, you can see we get a message tag created, and it disappears. So we finished up with creating the tag. Now what we're going to do is we're going to display all the tags. And what we're going to do is we're going to search a tag, all right here. And we can obviously order them. So let me just do this. We can order them by the name, by the ID. So let's say the name. We can order them ascending, or we can do a descending. And we can do obviously the created at date, and we can display how many per page. So that's what we were building in this episode. Another question I just want to pose to you right up front right here. Let me know if you guys want this to be in separate views. So as you can see, we got the create view right here. We got the index view. So all on the same view underneath each other, right? That can be an option, or I can do tags like this is the index view, and then I can have a create view, and then I can have a show view, all that kind of stuff. So I can put them all in separate views. Please let me know, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. But anyway, let's quickly start building this up. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our index view. So open up your terminal, so PHP artisan make, and we're going to make a Livewire component, and we're going to do that inside the tags folder, and we're going to call that one index. All right, so as you can see, we've got a class and a view created for us. All right, so let's go to the class under app, ACP, Livewire. Under tags, you will see we got our controller. Here. So basically our Livewire component. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use pagination. So we're going to say use with pagination. Just make sure you bring that in, import that at the top. As you can see, it brings it in right there. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to create a public variable called per page. And we're going to set that to 10. The next one is we're going to create a public variable, and we're going to call this one search. This is for the search functionality, and we're going to set that to an empty string for now. Okay. The next one is we're going to create a public variable, and we're going to call this one order by, and we're going to set that by default to use the ID. Okay. And the other one is we're going to do a public order ascending, ASC, and we're going to set that by default to true, like this. All right, now the next thing we need to do is we need to be able to render that tag. Okay, so let's just quickly do this. All right, so what are we going to do is we're going to pass all the tags to this view. Right, so we need to get the tag. So we're just going to do tag, and we're going to create a static method inside basically our tag component called search, basically our tag model called search. And when we pass through, we want to pass this search in there. search. Right, so we want to pass that to the component. And what we want to do is we want to order that by, so order by, and then we just want to say this order by. So basically the method that we created there, so the public property actually. And we want to say this ascending. We want to check if we call on this method, so order ascending. If it's true, use ASC, else use DASC. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to paginate. We're going to paginate with the amount that we set it right here. So by default, I set it to 10. Okay, so we're just going to do per page. So just to actually, we need to reference as this per page, like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get all the tags. We're going to create that method in a second. Then we're going to check, we're going to pass in the search. We're going to check if the order by default, right, this order by is the ID. So if we change that to be the name, it will search it by that name. And we're going to order by default, it's set to true. So we're going to do order by ascending. So if this is true, set it by ascending. If it's false, just set it descending. And we just want to paginate it this per page. All right, so let's quickly open our tag model and actually create the search method. Right, so just do like this, tag model. Right, let me just give us some room here. So like this, let's open our tag model quickly. Right, in our tag model right here, we're going to create a public static function. So a static function, and we're going to call this one search. And we're going to pass in that search variable like this. Right, so what we're going to do, if the search is empty, all right, so in this case, let's say by default, we set it as an empty string. Okay, so what we're going to do, if that search is empty, so we can just going to put empty and we pass in the search variable. Okay, so if it's empty, just do a static query. Okay, so we're just going to do a static, and then we're just going to do a query. All right, else, all right, let's put the else in here. Let's put it underneath each other. It will be better to read it actually. So if the search is empty, do this, else we're going to basically do the static query. Static. Let's remove this. We're going to do the query. All right, so we're going to do that. We're going to check where. In this case, we're going to check the ID, where the ID is like %, okay, %. And then we can just concatenate the search. And then we can concatenate the % again. All right, so meaning what this is let's say you've got a whole lot of different fields. Let's say you're doing it for the post. Now, in this case, we're going to check if the ID is equal to the search result, basically, right there. So if we type in 1, we're going to check if the tag is equal to that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check or where. I'm thinking of order, or where the name is like. Going to check the %. Now we can concatenate the search like this. %. Right, so now what we're checking is we're checking where the ID is like the search or where the name is like the search. If you, let's say we're doing like a post, like I said before, you can add a couple of always statements right here. So let's say you've got a title, you can add the title in there or the body like this, and then you can just obviously end it off with a semicolon right here. Okay, but we're not going to make use of that, so I'm just going to delete this. So just for if you guys want to do that for a post or whatever the case might be. All right, so we can check the query. All right, if this is empty, by default, we send an empty string like that. Okay, so it will be empty, so it will just basically return nothing. All right, and if it's not empty, we're going to check where the ID is like that search that we pass through, or where the name is equal to that search. And if you have extra other fields in your database that you want to check, you can do them like here, or with always statements. So in this episode, we're going to work on our index view. So I don't want to waste your guys' time. There's quite a lot to do, so let's get started. Right, so just pause the video if I'm going a little bit too fast, but I'm a slow typer so you guys can follow along. So let's create a div with a flex of width of full. Let's just do a flex width full. Okay, and inside that, we're just going to give it padding of 3. And inside that, we're just going to give it a space x of 2. Right, so this is responsible. Let's quickly go to our index right here. This is responsible for all these kind of things. So if we, for a search box, for our per page, for our order by, and for our order ascending and kind of stuff. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So this div is kind of, think of it as our heading. So inside this one is we're going to create our search box. So this is the first one we're going to do. So search box. Okay, and we're just going to create a div. We're going to give it a class of width of 3, 6, or you can use 1, 2. All right, the next thing is in here, we're just going to have an input, and we're going to bind that basically to our wire model of search right here. So let's quickly do that. So wire model, we're going to add a debounce. We don't want too many requests to the service with every keystroke. We want that to happen after every 300 milliseconds, and we want to add the search field right there. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of classes we're going to add. So you can be creative, you can style it however you want. I'm just going to show you guys a few. So let's quickly go relative, right, width or full. Right, I'm quickly going to add some styling, and if you guys want to add them as well, please do. Right, so there's a bunch of styling. So if you guys want to copy it, please pause the video and just copy it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a placeholder in here, and we can just say search tags. Okay, that makes sense. Just like that. Okay, so the next thing, so that's all done. So that's basically for our search box. That's the first div. Now the next one in here is going to be for our order by. So let's give it a class as well. So I'm just going to give this one a width of 1/6, just like this. So I think, yeah, that's fine. Let's do the next one. That is the relative. Anyway, let's quickly do a relative in here as well. Give it a width of 6. The next one right here, this is going to be a select field. Okay, so let's quickly do a select. All right, and we're going to give it a name in a second. All right, now the select field, we're going to wire bind it as well. So wire model, and we're going to link that to the order by. Order by, like this. We're going to give it an ID of, let's say, order by. This is an ID. We can remove the name. We don't need that. Okay, and we're going to give it some classes as well. So I'm going to add the classes in here. So I'm just going to do relative, width, or full, and some extra ones. Right, so that's it all done. So the next thing in here is we want to add the option fields. Right, the value for the first one, this one will be for the ID. Let me just do this for the ID, and we're just going to do ID. Okay, let's just copy this down. This one actually, this will be a little bit easier. Let's do an option with emit, because then I can just press tab. So this will be the name, and this one will be the name. Okay, so that's that one. So the other option that we have is for the created ad. Okay, so we can just do it like that. Created ad. Okay, so that's our order by. So we can, if you have additional fields, obviously you can add them in here. So that's our order by. So let's just make sure I close that div. Right, so the next one that we have, you know what we can do? We can add a downward arrow as well. So let's quickly do that. So absolute. And what we want to do is we're going to insert y, let's say of 0, and we just want to give it a right of 0 as well. And then we just want to give it the flags, and then items center, because I'm going to use the same one over and over again. So I'm just going to do a px of 2 and just do this. Okay, just like this. Padding x of 2 and a text gray of, let's say, 700. And pointer events none. Right, so I'm just going to copy this one down as well, but see, we're don't have to actually redo it again. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. That's our order by. Now this one is going to be the order ascending or descending. So let's quickly do that. So order ASC. So let's quickly create a div for this one. This will be relative as well. So with a width of 1/6. And so what we can do to make this a whole lot easier, let's copy the top one and paste it in here. Right, instead of Y model order by, we're going to call on this one right here. Let me just show you. So we're going to call on this model right there. So I'm just going to copy it just to make sure I don't do any spelling mistakes. Like this. Right, so we link that order by. All right, so now the fields that we're going to work with right here is going to be 1 and a 0. Now the 0 is false, okay, and a 1 is true. And to be true, we do ascending. and this one will be descending. All right, so let's move on to the next one, is the per page one. So let's quickly do that. So order by. So let's just copy this whole div down as well. So just to make it easier for us. And this is going to be per page. Okay, so we're going to keep everything basically the same. The only difference would be we need to model this to be the per page. Okay, so just make sure you name it the same, otherwise you're going to get errors. Okay, just make sure it's the same. So spelling mistakes can creep quite easily in. So let's start off with the first one. Let's delete this, put an option. Okay, the first option, this one will have a value of 5, and we're just going to do 5. Copy it down. I'm just going to do it. Do how many ever you want. All right, for me, I'm just going to do these 3 right here. So 5, 10, and 20. Let's quickly see if we can view this header. Right, so as you can see, we got our search tags right there. We got an ID, we got our ascending, and we got our 5, 10, and 25 right here. So everything is good. So the next part right here is we need to loop over our tags and display them accordingly. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to minimize the head section, and underneath this, I'm going to create a div with an overflow of hidden again, and with a shadow. Right, just like that. Now this is going to be responsible for our table. So I'm just going to add a table in here, right? And I'm going to give it, let's start styling quickly the table actually. So let's give this a class of width of full. And export. Okay, that's our table. The next thing is we need to do our table head. Okay, so the table head, and inside that we're going to have a table row, and each of that is going to have a table like this, right? So we're going to have one for the ID. Like we're going to style them in a second. ID, name, and created add date, and then obviously the actions button. Right, so what I've done is I added some font bold, all the kind of styling to my table head. You guys can obviously pause the video and just add them in there and add some styling right there. So that's our table head right down. The next one is our table body. Okay. All right, so let's give it a class of text extra small and divide Y. Let's say, yeah, just divide Y. And then we can just do divide gray 200, not too much. And then we can just give it a background of indigo 50. Right, just like that. Right, the next thing we're going to do in here is we're going to add a table row, which we're going to loop now in a second over all the tags. We just want to give this a class of white space, no rep. Okay, so let's just quickly do an add for each. So each tags as tag. Okay, now we're just going to bring this in there. Right, and then we're going to give each one of them a table data. Okay, now let's start off just with a class actually. So this one is for the ID. Let's give it a padding of 4. All right, for the ID, what we're going to do is we're just going to get the tag, and we just want to get the ID of the tag. So let me just quickly open my tag model, and let's see if I'm referencing the ID. I'm just quickly going to get that. So public function ID, and this is going to be an integer. Okay, and I'm just going to return. All right, so after the ID is the name. Just going to do that. The name, and after that is the created add date. This one is going to be the created add, like this. If the method inside there, I'm just referring to this created add date. So when I'm calling on this method, it's just going to bring me with a formatted created add date like that. Okay, so just like this. Right, the last one right here is for our action buttons, and I'm just going to get create. I'm just going to call this one just delete. Yeah, just action buttons for now, because when we get to the update, edit, and delete part right there, we're going to make use of this right here. So let's quickly see if we can view all the tags. But before I do that, actually, I need to actually display the links. So underneath the table right here, I'm just going to create another div, and I'm going to call this one right, and I'm just going to do tags links, right, and we're just going to give it some padding of 2 and BG indigo 50. Righty now, so let's quickly go and see if we can actually view this page. Okay, so let's do that. Right, so that's basically the index view right here. You can obviously style it however you guys want. So let's start off. As you can see, we only see 5 right now. Let's change it to 10. As you can see, we see 10 tags. Let's make it 20. As you can see, we view them like that. So as you can see right now, it's ascending. So let's do a descending. As you can see, it descends them. Right, so let's keep it right there, and we just descend them by the name, okay, or by the created end date, everything, or by the ID. Everything works quite nice. So let's quickly do the search functionality. So P, all right, as you can see, it searched it right there. All right, so if you guys have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, please leave it for me in the comment section. I'll gladly assist you guys. So what we're going to do in this episode, as part of our Livewire CRUD series, I thought it would be best if we add SweetAlert 2. If you have this tool in your belt as a developer, it will help you a great deal. So I think I'm going to add that. So in order to, let's quickly edit this. We're still going to use the edit, so don't mind me for now. So we're still going to create this functionality, but I just wanted to show you, as you can see, a toaster pop up right there. So let's quickly change this to something else. As you can see, right now it gives us that toaster notification right there. All right, so I'll leave a link in the description for SweetAlert 2. Right, so in order to get there, to do installation, all you do is you go to installation in the menu right there. You will see, I'm not going to use the CDN for testing purposes. This is quite nice, but if you're going to do a production app, I recommend to use npm to install it. All right, so let's quickly go do that. So we're going to do npm install. So copy that part. Right, so in your application, what you do is you open up your terminal and you paste it in there, and then you press install. Right, so now that it's all finished, the next thing we need to do is we need to add it to our JavaScript file. So under resources, JS, app.js, right here. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say import. All right, we're going to import SweetAlert from, and then we can just say SweetAlert 2, the one that we just installed like that. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit darkened compared to the other one. It's because we haven't used it yet. In order to use it, what we're going to do is we're going to say window.swal is going to equal to SweetAlert 2. So as you can see, it lightens right now. All right, so the next step, so after we've done this, save that, and then you open up your terminal again. All right, and then we do npm run dev. Okay, just like that. So do that. So what will happen is it will compile that SweetAlert to be part of Alpine.js and with your JavaScript files that you already have. Okay, so it will compile the Bootstrap, Alpine.js with SweetAlert 2. So as you can see, it's successful. So basically what will now happen is it will go to the public folder under JS. It will be part of that JS file right there. So now we can use it. All right. So the next thing we want to do, if you want to customize anything inside your SweetAlerts, like colors or anything like that, and as we're using Tailwind, in order to do that, we go to resources again, CSS and app CSS. Okay, so if you want to style or do anything like that, okay, so what we do is we add for Tailwind, we add an add layer. Okay, we set that to base. Okay, and now the first thing in here is basically the name of the component that you're targeting. In my case, I want to target the icon success. So what I want to do is I want to add a dot swal to, okay, / toast, and then we can add the swal again to, and then we can, because they will all be in the same line, and then I just want to go for the icon success. Right, so obviously you can do the warning one, all that kind of stuff. I will leave a link in the documentation and you guys can go and read up further like that. All right, so in here, I just want to apply. So this, I just want to apply Tailwind classes. So I'm using add apply right here. And let's say you want to change the toaster's background color to be something else. So we can say, just say BG blue, BG red, or whatever the case might be. And the next thing is, that's quite important, just add the important flag right here as well. All right, so that it makes use of that. Okay, but don't leave any spaces between them. Okay, so if you type them in, don't leave a space like that, because it will treat this as a child of this class. Okay, so what we want to do, they need to be close together because they're going to be on the same line. All right, just like that. All right, and after you finish with that, you can just do npm run dev again. Okay, just like this. All right, so npm run dev. All right, so then it will give you also a success message, and now you can basically, if you want to add more styles for your toaster, you can do that in here. All right, so let's close this off. Now, we haven't created this yet, but I just wanted to show you the edit one. So I just want to show you how to actually send it to the toaster. All right, in order to send a message, we would have done a session, and then we just would have flashed the session like this. right, we would have done this. Right, so this is what we would have normally have done. So we would set session flash with a success message, but this is not going to work for us because we kind of want to be responsive and all that kind of thing. So I'm not going to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, like we did right now, we installed SweetAlert. So basically what we do is we will dispatch a browser event, okay? And you can name this whatever you want because this is the event that we're going to listen to. Now in this case, I'm sending an updated event, okay? The title will be tag updated. The icon will be a success icon. Let me just quickly show you the SweetAlert icons. Right, so if you come to the documentation right here, let me make it a bit bigger. You will go to icons. You will see in the menu right there, you go to icons. And as you can see, there's a success one, there's an error one, there's a warning, info, and question. Right, so the one that I set is success right there. And the icon color right here, I want it to be green. All right, so this is the event that we're dispatching. So, right, so the next thing is we need to listen for that. So if we go to the edit, right, so I push the scripts to the stack scripts in the layout, but I'm going to show you that in a second. Then we're going to say window.add event listener. Then we're going to listen for that event. Okay, we're going to listen for that updated event, right? And then we create a function with the event parameter. Okay, and then we get that SweetAlert. Then we fire off this right here. Now the first thing is the title. Right, the title is the title that we're passing in here. Okay, the icon is the icon that we're passing in here, and the color is the one that we're passing in here. There's obviously more that you can do, but I just wanted to show a limited amount in here. And then you can have the timer, how long the toast notification to appear. And right now we set it to 3 seconds. All right, so just think of it counts in milliseconds right there. And the toast, if you set this to false, it will be a big block. If you set to a toaster, it's just a small little snippet. And then we set the position to top right. You can have, let me just quickly show you the positioning. All right, the next thing you're going to do in order to just view the positioning, you're going to go to configurations right there. And if you go down a bit, you will find positioning right here. Then you can see the different positions it can be in. As you can see, top, start, top, end. I will leave a link in the description so if you guys want to go and read more about that, okay? All right, and the next thing is we have a timer of the progress bar to let us know how many seconds or milliseconds is still left of the toaster to be there. So if it's after 3 seconds, basically the toaster disappear. And this is show confirm button. So if you want to actually let someone click OK or anything like that, you can just enable this and set it to true, all that kind of stuff. Tool to use. And so in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to create another Livewire component for edit so that we can have an edit button right here so that if we click this button, then we can be able to edit any tags that we want. Right, so let's get started. Right, so let's open up your terminal. So then we're just going to do PHP artisan make Livewire. And we're going to go inside the tags folder and we're just going to call this one edit. All right, so let's make a component. So as you can see, we got a class right now and we created a view. All right, so let's quickly go there under app, HTTP Livewire, under tags. All right, so for those that have been following the series, you will see that I just changed my store one just to create just to keep the restfulness of the folder. So right now I'm just going to have a create, edit, and index, and I will have a delete one in the coming episode. Right, so let's go to the edit one right here. Now this is our class and this one is our view right there. Now before I do anything in here, so let me just call this one just edit for now. Right, and what I'm going to do in my index view, where I'm going to use that edit view, so let me just bring it in here. So our edit component. So what I'm going to do, I have to link it right here. So Livewire tags.edit. But now there's an important thing we need to do because we're going to pass through the tag to the component. Okay, so we're just going to pass the tag, so we can receive this tag that we're looping over right here. And we're going to pass that to the component. But here is the important note as well. Both are important, but I just want to emphasize on this one right here. So the wire key, you can use wire key or you can just use key. Both up to you. Now the thing is, since we're using a nested component, the reason that's why I kind of like to do this lesson right now, because if you're doing nested components, you need to understand that in order for Livewire to keep track of everything that's happening inside this basically inside our index component and to keep track of its children right here, it needs to have a key. Otherwise, it won't know, because all of these, let's say we're looping, let's say 20 tags, all of them is going to have probably the same identity key, and that is not the ideal situation you want to be in. Right? So what you want to do is you want to assign them a very unique key. Right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a wire my key, so just for you guys to have both. Right, so just going to put, right, so now the thing is, let me just give some room here. So what we have is we've got our double quotes, and then we have our single quotes. Now in our single quotes, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to call this one edit, all right, tag like this, right, and then inside that, I'm just going to concatenate the tag ID, just like this. All right, now what will happen now is for every single tag, it's going to have a unique tag ID of edit tag with like edit tag 1 or edit tag 2 or edit tag 3. Now let's say we add another nested component. Now in this case, which we will do is we will add the Livewire tags.delete, and it's also going to have a unique key needed. So in that case, we're going to do delete tag ID, and etc. etc. But I'm just going to mention this very quick because I'm going to explain to you later in detail. Now the thing is, you must understand, if you're coming from Vue.js or you're coming from any other JavaScript framework, in Livewire, the children components are not, I'm just emphasizing, not reactive. So if the parent component change, the children don't react to the parent's change. So there's a kind of little hack that we have to do in order for the children to be reactive to the parent. But I'm going to explain that to a little bit more detail when we get to that part, okay? So for now, just bear with me. The little hack that we have is just we can add just a now timestamp to force the child to be reactive to the parent. If you don't understand that, you will understand a little bit later. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to call this one edit button. Okay, so for now, let me just delete this one. All right, so now this is basically the edit button that we have right there. So just edit. So I just need to see that edit. Okay, so let's quickly see. All right, so as you can see, we've got our edit button right there. Another thing I just want to show you, I just quickly want to show you the documentation. All right, so I just wanted to show you guys this. If you go to nested components under the documentation, if you want to go and read more about it, just read this part right here. Nested components can accept data parameters from their parents, which we have just done right now. We pass through the tag to the child component. However, they are not reactive like props from a Vue component. Okay, very important. You will see when we progress that they actually are not reactive. So what we have just read right now, we've passed this data from the parent component to this child component. All right. So whenever this parent component updates regarding the tag, the child right here will not be reactive to the change of that tag. But anyways, we will get there. I don't want to hammer it to death. I will get there in a second. All right, so let's go on. So now we need to update our class. Let's go to our edit class right here. Okay. Now there's a couple of things I want to do. So you must also remember, if we have a form in here, which we're going to get to, but let's not jump ahead. Okay, let's go to our edit class right here. Just remember, we're passing, let's just open. All right, so now we need to receive this tag. So let's quickly go there. So in the first thing, we're going to create a public property, and we call this one tag right here. So that's the first one. The next thing is we want to create a modal as well. So if the person clicks that button, they need to get a modal popping up to allow them to edit the tags. Okay, that's the next thing. So we're going to do an open modal, and we're going to set that by default to be false, which makes sense. Otherwise, every tag will have an open modal, and that will not be nice. The next thing is public function, public method, property actually. We want to call this one a form ID. You will understand. So if let me just quickly show you where this is coming from. So if we go to our create, because we're going to create a form to actually submit this tag to the component. Right, so let's quickly go to this one right here. Now, if we have a form right here, and we click this button right here, okay. So right now, we don't need to give an ID to this form right here, because this form ID and this button is only one of them. But now remember, in our edit view, this one right here, every single button will have a unique form, and we don't want to use basically just a one ID for that form. So we want every form to have a unique ID. So when we click the button, it will actually correspond to the right one. But you will understand in a second. Okay. So that's the form ID right there. Now what I want to do is I want the mount method. So this, just treat this as a constructor. Okay. So I just want to give the form ID a unique ID of the tag. So I'm just going to say this form ID. Right, the form ID, I'm going to equal that to the tag ID, like this. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we just mount that tag that we receive from the component itself. So from the component right here, the one that we're passing through to this view, to this component actually, we're just going to get their tag ID to assign it to that form ID. But you will understand. Right, so let's quickly move on to the next part. All right, we need to create rules. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a protected rules. Okay, so the rules, and that's going to equal to just we're gonna deal with just the tag name. So just remember we're passing in the tag right here. So what I want to do, the tag name is going to equal to, it must be required, all right, and then it must be unique string. All right, the tag name must be unique and it must be a max of 10. All right, so let's move on. The next part right here is for the real-time validation. If you guys remember from when we create the tag, right? So public function, this one is going to be updated, and we're just going to listen for the property like this, and then we're just going to this validate only. So for real-time validation, and we just pass in the property like that. Okay, so now that's for the real-time validation. Right, let's move on. Now this one is going to be to basically open the modal or close the modal. Okay, so let's just quickly public function, and we're just going to do an open modal to update tag. All right, and then we're just going to set reset the error bag. So this reset error bag, this one right here, and the next one is this. We're just going to set this dot open modal, and we're just going to set it to true. So this will basically open the modal of that. By default we set it false, and here we just open it. All right, so let's quickly create another method in here, and this is going to be actually responsible for actually updating the tag. So the tag that we receive, so this tag, all right, that we receive from right here, okay, so that tag, all right, we want to call an update method on it, so update, all right, and then we just want to pass in a couple of things in here. And the only one that we're doing right now is the name, and we just want to say to this tag name, just like that. All right. What I will do, I'm not going to add any flash, anything like that, since we installed SweetAlert. So I want to deal with that in the next episode. So I'm not going to dispatch it from here right now. I'm going to do that in its own episode. All right. So I'm just going to set right for now to this reset, because I feel like there's a lot that I will have to explain to kind of make more sense. Otherwise, I'm going to rush through it, and you guys will run into a little bit of things that you guys not quite understand, and I don't want that to happen. I kind of want to make things to make sense for you guys. All right. So now we finished with our class for now. The next part, we're going to dispatch it, because there's two ways we can do this. For SweetAlert, we can either send this browser. Let me show you the two. All right. So we can dispatch an event, or we can emit an event. All right. They're both ways we can use for SweetAlert. All right. But I want to explain. That's why I want to kind of dedicate that to its own episode, so that we can learn quite a number of things from it. All right. So then we reset that. All right. So let's quickly go to our tags edit view. This one right here. This one is actually responsible for having the form and everything and communicating with our component right there. All right. Now what we can do is let's go to our create one. Just to make it easy for us, let's copy everything inside your create, or if you have the other one, if you didn't change your name, your previous name was store, just copy all the things in the store right there and just paste them in your edit view like this. All right, so let's quickly make a couple of changes in here. All right, to check the error now, the only change we need to make, this mustn't be just a name, so we must actually include the tag name like that, okay, because it's the tag parameter that we're passing through. All right, so this, instead of a create tag, this needs to be edit tag, just like that. All right, and this needs to be, I'm just going to make this yellow, just like this. All right, so when we click this button, open modal to update tag, not create tag. So we're just going to call that update one. So let's go in here. You will see I'm calling on this update modal to update tag, open modal to update tag, that one right there. Okay, so the alert message will disappear. I'm not going to make use of the alert message. Okay. Actually, what I want to do, I want to use Blade UI Kit icons instead of the edit tag, but for now, let's leave it like that. Right, so we got to open modal. So this is basically, if we click this button, this needs to be set to true, and it will open this right here. Now, as the title stands right there, I'm just going to call this one update tag, like this. Okay, so I'm just going to put update actually there. All right, let's move on. The next part is quite important. This part right here. the update, this needs to correspond to the method, this method right here that's responsible to update the tag. So we need to change this to update. All right. This ID for the submit form. Just remember, because we don't have the button, just for those that are new, please bear with me. All right. For those, if the button is not inside the form, we give it a unique ID to correspond to the outside button, right? Because in that button, we have a form and we correspond that name right there to the name of the form right there, okay? So that's why we want to give every form a unique ID. If you don't want to do this, you just add a button or submit button between the form tags right there, okay? Anyway, let's move on. Now, the thing is, I want to give this one a name of update form, okay? So otherwise, it's going to look for that. All right, and we're going to just add that form ID. Okay, so this form ID, just to kind of give it a unique name, because remember, the form ID, I set it to the tag ID of the passing parameter that we receive from the parent component. Okay, so the form ID right there. Okay, let's move on. The next thing is everything stays the same in here, except now we don't get the name, we're getting the tag.name. Okay, so let's just change the name. Let me just copy this part right here. Let me just do it actually like this. So we're just going to put tag dot notation. So tag dot like this, and the error is tag dot like that. All right, so just make sure you change them from tag dot, because we actually do right model. So we're just getting the tag right here, and as you can see, we validate the tag dot name like that. Okay, so that's the first part. Now let's move on. The footer, everything still stays the same, because remember, we're using the same property that we're toggling right here. So that one right there, okay? So that is the never mind. Now the other thing, since we're doing the form submit right here, we need to change that to be correspond to this name right there. So I can copy everything in there and paste it in here, and that will be for like having the same name. So if I click this button, it will correspond to this form right there. Now the thing is, this wired target, and we want to target the update like that. All right, awesome stuff. All right, like I said, I want to handle the emitting of the event for the update event in the next episode. But what I do want to do in here is I want to add an add push for the scripts, so that I don't have to do that in the next episode. All right, because what we're going to do, we're going to listen for either the emit event or the dispatch event right here. Okay, so let's quickly go to our layout view. So under resources, views, layouts right here, and I'm using the guest layout. I added the add stack scripts. Just make sure it's underneath your Livewire scripts, just like that. Okay, not above it. Okay, so let's just do it like that. Right. So now, in the next episode, what we're going to be doing is, if we actually put any scripts and listen for, because we're going to dispatch the SweetAlert from here. All right. Anyways, let's quickly see if we can get this button and this modal to work. All right. So let's click this button. All right. So as you can see, it popped up the modal with the details in there. All right. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to be working with events. All right. So we're going to receive the event in order to display basically our SweetAlert component right here, and to refresh our index parent component of our edit component right here. So as you can see, if we press the edit button right now, let's quickly click it. Right, so let's update PHP just to add a T or TD. Okay, so let's quickly press update. Now, as you can see, the parent component is not updating the new data. So it's basically our index view is not displaying the TD until we refresh the page right here. All right. So instead of doing a hard refresh like that, we just want the index component to basically refresh. So we're going to send an event to this index component to the refresh as soon as the child component edit is updated. All right. So that's another one. So that's the first emit. The second one is we're going to actually work with our SweetAlert right there. Okay. Let's start off with the first one. Right, so let's quickly open our two components. Under app, HTTP Livewire, under tags, you will see we have our index one. So this one will receive the basically the emit event that we're going to fire off in our edit one right here. Okay, so that's the first thing. All right, so when we update the component, we want to emit an event. So we're going to say this emit. Okay, so we want to emit what event? You can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to call this one saved event. All right, so let's quickly do that. Now, in our index one, this is the one that we want to refresh with the new data. So we're just going to do a protected listeners. All right, and then we just do protected listeners. And then we're going to listen for that saved event. All right, so when we receive that saved event, we're just going to refresh this component. So let's refresh like this. All right, and let's save that. Okay, let's quickly see when we update the component, it emits this event, and then it's going to refresh this component with the new data. Just before we do that, this mustn't be a comma, it needs to be an arrow. It kind of, when we see this, it needs to do this. So that I just, instead of a comma, just make sure you have that in there. All right, so let's quickly check this out. All right, so if I delete the TD and I press an update, you can see it updates the index right there. It removes it and it updates it with the new data. Right, so that's the first part. Now the next part is we need to work and receive our SweetAlert right here. Okay, so let's do that. Right, so like I explained in the previous episode, there's two ways we can actually dispatch an event to actually display a SweetAlert toaster message. Right, now let's start off with the first one. This one is going to be to dispatch a browser event. Okay, so we're just going to say dispatch in a browser event. Now what we're going to do, we're going to call this one updated. All right, so that is the name of the event. All right, so the second part right here is the title. So the title will be that we're going to say what will be the message be. So the message will be tag updated. Okay, so you can call this whatever you want. Now, the next part is the icon. Like I explained when we installed SweetAlert, the icon can be success, a warning, or question, or whatever the case might be. In my case, I'm just going to make that a success. Okay. Now, this part right here is the icon color. And we're going to set that to be a green color. Okay, so just like this. Right, for those that might be new, the icon that I just wanted to show you, the success, have a little tick right there, an error, have this, a warning, have an exclamation, info, that, and a question, this. So you can obviously decide however you want to do this. I will leave a link in the description for you guys to go and click, to go and read more about this. All right, so this is the first part of our dispatch. Right, so now we need to listen for that. And we're not going to listen in the component. We're going to actually go to the view right here. In the previous episode, we had pushed the scripts basically to our layout. So under layout, guest layout, we receive it under stack scripts right here. Now we need to basically listen for that event. Right, so now we need to do some JavaScript. For those that might not understand JavaScript, please bear with me right here. But this is how you're going to do that. Right, so between your push scripts tags right there, what we're going to do is we're going to create a script like this. Right, so what that allows us to do to put vanilla JavaScript between these tags. Okay, so what we want to do now is on window. All right, what we want to do on the window is we want to add an event listener. Okay, so event listener. Okay, let me just make sure I spell that right. All right, so what we want to listen for, we want to listen for that updated event. All right, so let me just quickly go in here. So I'm firing off this event. I'm dispatching this event to basically to listen to. All right, so the updated, if you named it something else like Joe's Soap or whatever the case may be, just make sure that this name right here, you spell it the same. Otherwise, it's not going to work. All right, so the next thing is we're going to create a method, a function, and we're going to pass the event parameter right there. Okay, so let me just put it in here. Now the thing is we're going to get that swell. All right, swell.fire. This is the SweetAlert right here. And we just want to fire off that event. Okay, and then we just want to do this. Okay, now the first part right here, the title. We're just going to get the title, and that's going to equal to the event. And then we just want to get the detail title. All right, so the detail is just as parameter that we're passing through, but the one that we receive right here, we're going to get the detail, we're going to get the title right there. Okay, so the detail title. The next thing is we want to get the icon. All right, so the icon is going to e.detail.icon. Right, the next one is obviously the icon color, so let's just do that. So icon color, and that is going to equal to e.detail. All right, the next thing that we want to do, we need to add in the timer. Okay, the timer, you can decide however long you want to do this. I'm just going to make this one almost 30 minutes. 3 minutes, no, 3 minutes, 30,000 milliseconds. That's 30 minutes. So I'm just going to make it 3 minutes. I just want the timer to go as basically as long as possible so that you guys can easily see it. The next one is the toast. All right, so if you set this to false, okay, now what will happen, it will display a big toaster instead of a small little one in the corner right there, but we're just going to set this one to true. I'll just want a little one. The next one right here, this will be for the position. Where do you want to position this? And now what I will do is I will leave a link in the description for you guys to obviously go and read the documentation. But now I'm just going to add mine top right like that. Okay, so that's the position I want it to be in. The next one is I just want a timer progress bar. So timer progress bar, and I'm just going to set that to true. And the last one right here, this will be show confirmation button. So confirm button, and I'm just going to set that to false. I don't want a confirmation button, so I'm just going to set it to false, and just like this. Right, so that's the first part. So that's how we can dispatch an event. Let's see if this works. All right, so I'm just going to add double D's, triple D's. All right, so as you guys can see, I've got a little message right there, tag updated, and that will stay a while like that because I'm saying for 3 minutes. But obviously by default, you will change it to be only 3 seconds. So I'm just going to delete this D's again. So let me just remove that. All right, so as you can see, tag updated right there. Awesome stuff. All right, so this is the one way to do it. Obviously with the browser, okay? Now let me just comment this one out, actually just cut it out. The next way to do it is obviously with the emit event. So I'm just going to copy this out. So let me just, the next one is if we dispatch emit event, all right? And we're going to call this one updated as well. And I just want to pass in the same parameters to that component. So let me just do the event. So let me just copy this and paste it in there. All right, now the difference will be, now we will have, we still use the same script tags, okay, just like that. But now what we do is we say livewire dot on, okay, so on what? On the updated event, okay, then run a function. And we're just going to pass in the same thing, an event parameter. Okay, and then we're just going to say swal, SweetAlert basically, swal.fire. So if anyone is new and wonder where I get the swal from, so if we go to our resources, JS, app.js, you can see I'm referring to this swal right here, this one. Okay, so let's go back, swal.fire, and then we just want to fire off this. Now the thing is, we're not going to do it the same way. Let me just actually put this on top right there. And just cut this out quickly. All right, so this is the browser one. I just changed it back to 3 seconds. Top right, everything is still true. Like that. Okay. Now the thing is, this one is for the emit event, this one that we're listening to, not the browser event. Okay. Now in here, remember here we're using the detail right there. This one we're just going to do e.title. Okay. So let's just put quickly in the title. I'm just going to do the first one, and then we're just going to be e.title, just like that. Okay. All right. And then you can have the same parameters that you would normally have for that in here. Okay. So instead of the e.detail title, we just add e-title, e-icon, and stuff like that. Okay, so if you change this to be an event, let's say you wanted the full name, just make sure you put event like here. Okay, so event, etc. So this is the last part that we're going to do for our CRUD series, is the delete part right there. So what I'm going to do is if we press this button, we need to get a modal popping up right here to ask us, are we sure if we want to delete this tag? Then press the delete button and actually deleting the tag. Right, so that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. Right, so let's open up our terminal and quickly create the components. So PHP artisan make Livewire, and we're going to call this one inside the tags folder, and we're just going to call this one delete. Just like that. Right, so now our class and view are created. So let's go there quickly. Under app HTTP Livewire, you will see we have a tags right here, and we have the view right here under Livewire tags.delete. All right, so we got those two. So let's open up those two. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to link this delete component in our index view. So let's go there under app, let's go quickly, app HTTP Livewire tags index. This one right here. We listen for that saved event. Okay, so let's go to the index view right here, and just underneath, let's just give some room like this. So underneath our edit button, we just want to add our delete button right here. So let's quickly link our Livewire component. So Livewire tags delete. We need to pass in the tag in order to know which tag we're going to delete. All right, so I'm just going to pass in the tag. Okay, this can be quotes in there. Right, and we need to add a wire key. Okay, and we're going to equal that to single quotes and then double quotes inside, single quotes inside the double quotes, and we're just going to call this one delete tag just to kind of create a unique key. And then we just want to concatenate on this one, the tag ID. Right, for this one, we don't need to add the now timestamp in there to make this component reactive, because this one will be deleted. So there's no need for this one to be reactive to the parent component. What I want to do as well is I just want to give it a class on the component itself, basically on the table data. So this table data right there, where this component are nested in. Okay, so what we want to do, we just want to display them flags, and we just want to make them a space. Let's have a space x of 6. There's some spacing between them, so let's just quickly, let's make it 4. All right, so this is our delete button. So let's quickly just put delete like this so that we can just see what it looks like. All right, so as you can see, it doesn't look very nice, but we can see the different delete right there. Okay, so let's make this functional. All right, so let's start off with the delete component itself. The first thing, we need to get the tag. So let's just quickly create that. So public, we need to get to receive the tag. And the next thing is we need to obviously toggle the modal. So we're just going to say open modal, and we're going to set by default to false, just like that. The thing that we could have done is we can actually, by default, we can make a trade for this, for the modal and all that kind of stuff, instead of having to use it in all the different models, having to type it all out. We could have just created the trade, but since we're learning, some people might just see this video. They might not even see the rest of the videos. So that's why I'm doing it like this. But what I would do, normally I don't like to repeat my code. So I would normally just create a trade or a blade component for reusable code and etc. All right, but I'm doing this for learning purposes. Okay, so the next thing is we're just going to say create a public method to actually open the model. So let's just quickly say open modal to delete tags. All right, so that's the one, and then we're just going to reset the error back. So reset. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we want to basically open the model, and we want to set that to true. Okay, so as you can see around here, this is a reusable code that we can just create a trade for that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a method called delete. So this will be responsible for actually deleting the tag. So what we're going to do is we're going to say just this tag, and we just say delete, just like that. All right, no funny business. All right, and then we're just going to dispatch a browser event. So dispatch browser event, and we're going to call this one tag deleted. I just wanted to just create a variety so that you guys can see the naming. It's what you name it here is kind of what you listen for. All right, so this one, we're just going to say the title, and we're going to set the title to tag deleted like this. Okay, and then we're just going to set the icon. We're going to set the icon basically to warning. Right, and then after that, we just want to check the icon color. So icon color, and we just want to set that to red, just like this. Right, so after we dispatch the event, what we want to do as well, we want to emit an event we can say emit like this, or we can say emit up. So emit up will only emit to the parent component. So the parent will listen for this. So this will be a good example to use it in. In the previous episode, we used the basically just emit, and it will just emit an event right throughout the application. So whoever wants to listen for that event, they can listen for it. But in this case, it will only emit up, will only emit to the parent component. In this case, it will be the index because we want the index to refresh. So I'm just going to emit a saved event basically to the parent, and I'm just going to say this. Reset like that. Okay, so we can do either or. We can do the emit, but it goes everywhere. If we just do emit up, it will only go basically the parent. So the parent in this case will be the index, because if we look like this delete button is nested inside our index component. Okay, awesome stuff. All right, so we emit that, we dispatch that event. So let's quickly go to the view itself. Okay, the delete view right here. There's a couple of things we need to do obviously in here, but we have to make sure whatever we do that within the two divs and not outside. Okay, so let's start off with the first one. We're going to give this div a class of pairing of 2, right? And then inside here, we're just going to, this is going to be basically our delete button. Okay, so so I'm just going to create a div with the flags and a gap default. All right, so in there, now we're just going to use Jetstream. So we're just going to do an xjet button. Okay, and this is going to be XFAR. I'm just going to use basically Blade UI kit icons. So, okay, and I'm just going to say trash and alt. So this is basically a font awesome icon. I'm just going to give it a class of the width of 4 and a height of 4, and I'm just going to close off the tag like that. Now this button, I'm just going to give it a class or BG red. Okay, so BG red, let's say 500, a nice deep red. And when we hover over the button, we're just going to do a 400, just like that. Okay, but what is going to happen? So if we click this button right here, I want a wire. Okay, so wire click. We're going to listen for click event. As soon as we click this button, we're going to call in the open modal to delete tag. Right. So this one right here. So we're going to click on this one. Right. So if we click the button, it needs to do this inside that method. Right. So after we finished with that, we need to create an XJet dialog modal. Okay, so this is going to be responsible for actually the pop-up. The pop-up that we're going to see is this one's responsibility. Right, so what we want to do is we just want to do a Y model, and we equal that to the open model. Okay, that right there. Okay, so this needs to open. All right, let's start off with the first one. This is going to be the title. Okay, and the title is going to equal to X slot. And this is going to just have a name. It's going to equal to basically the title. And we're just going to do localization, and we're just going to say delete tag. Awesome stuff. Now the next thing we need to do, this is for the content. So let's go to the content. All right, so X slot, all right, for the content. And this is going to be, let's put the name actually in there. This needs to be the name, it's going to equal to content. Right, I'm just going to show for the people that might wonder where I'm getting the title and the content from. So if you publish your Jetstream vendor folder, okay, so then we go under resources, views, the vendor file, components, you will see that we've got a dialog modal, this one right here. Then you will see it's got a content and it's got a title. Title right there and a content, and here is the footer. Right. So if you want to add extra attributes, you can do that to your model itself. If you want to make it bigger, give it different background color, you can add all those things right there because it has an attribute bag right here. Okay, so let me just close this off. All right, in this part right here, you can type anything you want, but the message I'm just going to say, are you sure you want to delete the tag? Okay, so I'm just going to, I'm not going to go watch you guys, let me type it all out. Right, so let's move on to the next part. So this is the footer part. Okay, so this is the footer where all the buttons is going to be. So it's the nevermind button and it's going to be the delete button. All right, so let's quickly do this. All right, so I'm just going to do an X slot again. All right, so this is going to have a name and it's going to equal to the footer. All right, now for this one, we're going to create an XJet button. So this comes with the default installation. So it's a secondary button if you've done a Jetstream installation. All right, so this one we're going to say you're responsible for toggling the model. So if we basically the pop-up appears, but this one what we're going to do is we're just going to toggle the open model. If it's set to true, we just basically set it back to false. So toggle that, and we're just going to say open modal. Okay, and then yeah, we can just do never mind, just to kind of stay consistent with how they actually created the whole Jetstream thing. So never mind. Right, so that's our cancel button. So I'm just going to call this one cancel button. Okay, so the next part right here, this is our delete button. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create the same thing. I'm just going to use the warning button. So they got actually a danger button. I'm just thinking in terms of Bootstrap right now. So this is XJet danger and button. All right, so this also comes with Jetstream. So like I said, go and check under the folder that I just showed you guys in a second. So in here, we're just going to do a wire click. And if we click this button, we need to go to that delete method, the method that we just created right there that will delete this. Okay. So after that, so while that is busy, we're just going to add a loading attribute. Okay. And we just want to disable this button. So just disable like this. Okay. So let me just delete this just like that. And I'm just going to add some localization, which we're not going to do, but I just want to stay in the habit of doing it. And I'm just going to say delete tag like that. Now the thing is, we need to now because remember, as soon as we delete the tag, I want a message to appear, and we're using SweetAlert to do that. So I'm just going to add an add push. Okay, so the push, this part is for the scripts. Okay, so we're just going to create a script tag, and inside that we're going to listen for the browser event. Okay, because we're dispatching this browser event to that component. Okay, so window dot add event listener. Right, so for what event we're going to listen to, for the tag deleted event. So let me just quickly show you. So as you can see, this event, I'm just going to copy it just to prove. So copy that, paste it in here, just to make sure you have the same spelling. Sometimes just a simple spelling mistake can give you the stupidest errors. Okay, so then we have a function. All right, and I'm not going to type in everything since most of the things we already done in the previous couple of episodes. So I just want to, we're going to get this while, for those that are new, fire. Okay, so where I'm getting this from, so if we go to resources, JS, app.js, I'm referring to this window.style that's equal to the SweetAlert right there. So I'm calling on this right here. Okay, so swal.fire. Now the thing is, inside here, we're going to create a couple of methods. Okay, so let me just put this in there. All right, so we need to set the title, and the title, looks like this, the title is going to equal to e.detail title, and I'm going to do the rest. Okay, all right, so then we got our icon color. The timer is set to 3 seconds. All right, and the toaster is true. Let me just set it to false so that you guys can see how big it is, or you can experiment. Just set it to false, then you'll see for yourself. And the position is top right. Just play around with the position and all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's quickly see how this all works. All right, so let's quickly delete the tag. So I'm pressing on the button. All right, let's press delete the tag. As you can see, tag deleted, and it removed it right there. All right, so that's an end of this episode, guys. If you liked the video, if you have any questions or feedback or suggestions, please give the video also a like. And then if you have any feedback, suggestions, please leave with me in the comment section. And thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one, and adios.